Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're breaking down a truly landmark moment in American law, one that really puts the entire system to the test. To really get this story, you have to start with the numbers. And the first number is 9. That's the total number of justices sitting on the Supreme Court. And then you have this number, 0. That's how many of those 9 justices disagreed with the final decision. Think about that. A unanimous opinion. That kind of unity sends a message that is impossible to ignore, and it goes way beyond just this single case. And the result of that unity? Well, it means a former president's main legal game plan just got completely taken off the table, leaving him with, frankly, nowhere left to run. Okay, so let's unpack exactly what went down when Donald Trump's lawyers went to the Supreme Court with this emergency appeal. You have to understand this was a huge gamble. It wasn't just about arguing a point of law. The real strategy here was to delay, to run out the clock and push everything past the election. But the court's answer was fast, and it was crystal clear. They just flat out denied the request to hit the pause button. And with that, the last real shot at delaying the trial vanished. The entire delay strategy? It just hit a massive brick wall. And here's what makes that unanimous decision so stunning. It's who was part of it. We're talking about all 3 justices appointed by Donald Trump himself, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Barrett. They all voted with the majority. So you see, this wasn't some liberal versus conservative showdown. This was a decision that completely crossed all those ideological lines. And the court's order, which was unsigned, tells you everything you need to know about why they were so united. They didn't just dismiss it on some technicality. Nope. They went right to the heart of the argument. To put it in plain English, the justices were signaling that they just didn't see any way this immunity claim was ever going to hold up in court. So what was this big argument anyway? What was this idea at the center of the whole appeal? Well, it was a legal concept so broad, so sweeping, that it would have completely rewritten the rules of the American presidency. And here it is, absolute presidential immunity. The argument, basically, is that anything a president does while in office, and I mean anything, is permanently shielded from any kind of criminal prosecution. It is, by any measure, an absolutely extraordinary claim with some really profound consequences. And you can really see the stark contrast here. On one side, you have this abstract legal theory about immunity for official acts, but on the other side, you have the real-world implication, and that is a president who would be placed completely above the very laws they took an oath to uphold. Now, the court's ruling is one piece of the puzzle, but to really grasp the shockwaves this sent out, you have to look at the reaction it sparked, especially from one of the most respected voices in American conservatism. And that voice belongs to this man, George Will. I mean, for 50 years, he's been a pillar of the conservative movement. He was shaping Republican thinking way before Trump was even in the political picture. So when he has something to say, you can bet the traditional Republican establishment pays attention. And literally within an hour of the court's decision, Will dropped his own verdict. He didn't just call it a legal loss. No, he called it the death of a legal fantasy. That's powerful. And coming from him, you know it's not just partisan noise. It's a judgment from deep within the conservative world itself. He went on to frame this whole episode as something much bigger than one court case. He called it a stress test for the entire American system of government. You know, a moment that really asks the question, can our institutions actually handle this kind of pressure? And that's a key point, because this ruling, it doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's actually the latest piece of evidence in a pattern that we've seen play out again and again over the last few years. Just look at this timeline. It shows these critical moments where key officials and entire institutions were faced with a choice: personal loyalty to Trump or their oath to the Constitution. And each time, they chose the Constitution. You had Attorney General Bill Barr saying there was no widespread fraud. You had the Supreme Court tossing out earlier election challenges. You had Vice President Mike Pence refusing to overturn the election on January 6th. And now, this. At every single one of these pressure points, the system has held. So let's talk about what this all means on the ground. What are the immediate, real-world consequences now that this decision is in the books? Well, consequence number 1, the trial is back on the calendar. Judge Tanya Chutkin, who's presiding over the case, wasted no time. She immediately set a new schedule and even wrote in her order that there is, quote, no legal basis for further delay. The road to the courtroom is now wide open. But this ruling also kicks up a really tough political problem. You see, while the legal arguments have basically been dismantled, this YouGov poll shows that a huge majority of Republican voters, 71%, believe the whole prosecution is just politically motivated. So Trump's lawyers are in this bind where they have to fight a battle in a court of law, but also please a political base that doesn't even believe the court is legitimate. And this quote from Andrew McCarthy, who's a conservative legal analyst and a former federal prosecutor, just sums up the new reality perfectly. With this immunity claim shot down by every single level of the federal courts, there's really only one option left: face a jury. So let's wrap this up with the 3 big things you really need to remember from all this. First, the Supreme Court's rejection was completely unanimous. Even Trump's own handpicked justices were on board. Second, a major conservative intellectual, George Will, basically called the whole immunity argument legally dead. And third, this decision isn't a one-off. It fits right into this larger pattern of American institutions choosing to uphold the Constitution. And all of that leaves us with this final, crucial question. The system, as George Will said, went through a massive stress test. And this ruling, it suggests it held up. But the final answer to whether it truly passed, well, that's not just going to be decided in a courtroom. It's going to be decided by the American people.